Level 1. The one who thinks the map is the territory. The first trade closes green and you screenshot it. Not because anyone asked, because you need proof it happened. You've been paper trading for 6 weeks, and this $340 gain on an SPY call feels like the answer to something you haven't been able to name yet. You found options on a subreddit. Someone posted a $2,000 account turned into $47,000 in 11 days. You read that thread 4 times. You didn't notice the 100 comments underneath asking if it was real. You noticed the number. You open a Robinhood account with $1,500. You buy calls on a stock you heard mentioned on a podcast. The contract costs 47 cents. You don't fully understand what the Greeks are, but you've seen the word delta, and you know it has something to do with how fast the option moves. Close enough. The position doubles. You don't sell. Why would you sell something that's working? It triples. Then over 3 days, it goes to 0. Not down, 0. The expiration date was something you understood as a concept, but not as a clock. Now you understand it as a clock. You deposit another $1,500. The account is a game you haven't figured out yet, not a place where real consequences live. Level 2. The one who mistakes survival for skill. You've been doing this for 7 months, and you've had 3 account wipeouts. The third one hurt less than the first. You don't know what that means yet. You found a Discord. 43,000 members. Someone calls himself Flow King and posts his wins with a timestamp, never his losses. You pay $97 a month for the premium channel, where he posts entries before the free channel sees them. You tell yourself it's research. You start recognizing patterns, not real ones, patterns that feel real because you see them after the fact. A stock gaps up on earnings and you think, next time I'll know. You don't know, but you think you do, and that gap between those two things is where the next $2,000 disappears. One afternoon, you make $1,100 in 40 minutes on an NVDA weekly. You close the laptop. You go outside. You feel like the smartest person you've ever been. 3 days later, you give it back, plus $600 more on a position you held through earnings, because you were certain. The word certain is the most expensive word in this business, and you don't know that yet. You're still explaining trades to people at dinner. They nod. They don't know what you're talking about. Neither do you, fully, but the nodding feels like something. Level 3. The one who has stopped explaining. You don't talk about trading anymore. Not because you failed, you've actually gotten better, but because explaining it requires believing other people could follow. And somewhere in the last 18 months, you stopped believing that. Your win rate is around 52%. You know this because you started keeping a journal. Not an inspirational one, a spreadsheet. Entry price, exit price, IV rank at entry, DTE, underlying move, P&L. 81 trades logged. You found 3 setups that work. Not always, consistently. You sell premium now, mostly. You discovered that buying options is a tax on impatience, and that selling them is closer to running a small insurance business. You still buy directional plays sometimes, but smaller, and only when the setup is one of your 3. The psychological cost of losing has changed. It used to feel like failure. Now, it feels like weather. A defined risk strangle goes against you, and you close it at 2 times credit. You don't feel good about it. You also don't spiral. You log it. You move to the next trade. Your account is at $34,000. It started at $1,500. 3 restarts. But this version of the account, the one you've been managing for 8 months without a blow-up, feels different, quieter, like something you're building instead of betting. You still don't tell people at dinner, but now it's because you've run the numbers and you know how rare this is. And saying it out loud feels like touching something fragile. Level 4, the one the market has finally met. You managed $2.3 million in open positions before 9 a.m., and none of it feels like real money anymore. That observation doesn't comfort you. It concerns you, slightly, the way a doctor's expression concerns you. Not alarming, just notable. You've been doing this professionally for 4 years. You work at a mid-sized prop firm. They gave you a seat because you sent them a 22-month audited track record and a Sharpe ratio that made the risk manager ask to see it again. You did not screenshot the moment he asked to see it again. You noted it privately and kept going. Your edge is in earnings volatility mispricing. You run a model. The model is not magic. It is the product of 1,400 hours of work and a statistics textbook you read twice. You don't tell people this. They assume you have some innate talent. You let them assume it, because explaining the 1,400 hours is not a conversation that ends well for anyone. You've learned what information means here. The junior trader asks you questions, and you answer them accurately, but not completely. Not because you're protecting anything dramatic, because the complete answer requires context he doesn't have yet, and giving it to him without the context would mislead him more than help him. You remember being him. You remember the confident wrong answers. The firm's head of risk knows your name now. He knew it before you were introduced, which you noticed and didn't mention. Your P&L last year was $340,000. You live in a one-bedroom apartment. You drive a 6-year-old car. The money is mostly in the account. You are not building toward anything specific. You are building because stopping feels like the wrong direction. Level 5. The one who trades other people's fear. There's a specific kind of information that becomes available once you're running 8 figures. It's not illegal. It's structural. It's the difference between watching a crowd from street level and watching it from a building. The crowd is the same. What you can see is different. You run a volatility fund now. $22 million AUM. You didn't raise it all at once. You raised $4 million, ran it for 14 months at 31% net, and then the other $18 million came without you asking. That's something nobody tells you about this business. Past a certain point, money finds you and asks if it can work for you. The negotiation is just about terms. You have 2 analysts. One is 27 and terrifyingly good, and will leave in 2 years to start his own fund, which you already know. You don't tell him you know. You are preparing him anyway, because that's what this level requires. The knowledge that you are training your own competition and doing it willingly. You are rarely surprised by market moves, not because you predict them, you don't, and you distrust anyone who claims to, but you have structured your book so that surprise costs you defined amounts. The positions are architecture. They are not bets. The distinction matters enormously and takes most people a decade to feel in their hands rather than just understand in their heads. The analyst who wouldn't return your calls 4 years ago just sent you his personal cell number with a message that said, "Anytime." You replied, "Will do." You didn't save the number. You didn't need to. Your father asks you, still, every Thanksgiving, if you're being careful. You tell him, yes. He doesn't know what careful means in this context. You used to be frustrated by this. Now you find it not sweet, that's not the word, stabilizing. A reminder that there is a world where your Sharpe ratio is not a meaningful number to anyone. Level 6. The one the system was built around. You are not famous. This is intentional. Famous in this business means retail, means CNBC, means the kind of notoriety that moves markets against you before you've finished entering a position. The people at your level are names that appear in Bloomberg terminals and 13F filings, and occasionally in regulatory footnotes. That is the correct amount of visible. Your fund manages $340 million. You've returned 19% annualized over 11 years, net of fees, through 2 crashes and 1 pandemic. The 2020 drawdown was 6.8%. The recovery took 19 days. You do not talk about this at dinner parties because you no longer go to dinner parties where talking about it would mean anything. The decisions you make now are not faster than they used to be. They are slower. Specifically, they are slower because you have learned that the cost of a wrong decision at this size is not 10% of your account. It is the restructuring of how 16 employees come to work. You carry that weight differently than you carried losing $1,500. It is heavier and also quieter. The loud pain was easier in some ways. You have a meeting on Thursday with a sovereign wealth fund. They are considering a $75 million allocation. You will not change anything about your pitch for them. If your pitch doesn't fit what they need, it is better to know that on Thursday than in 18 months. There is a 26-year-old on your team who reminds you of someone. He asks questions the way you used to ask questions, slightly too confident, mostly right, unaware of the specific thing that is going to cost him significantly in about 14 months. You know what it is. You don't tell him. He wouldn't hear it yet. You remember not hearing it. You ordered the same coffee you've ordered for 11 years. Halfway through it, you noticed you don't actually like it. You've never liked it. You switched to tea. That was 8 months ago. It seems small at the time. Level 7. What it costs. There is no ceremony for arriving here. No moment. Just a Tuesday when you're reviewing a position and you notice that the number on the screen, $1.1 million in unrealized P&L on a single book, produces nothing in you. Not satisfaction, not anxiety. A reading, the way a thermometer produces a reading. You've been at this for 19 years. You do not calculate what you would have made in another career because the answer is not the point. The point was never the money, exactly. It was the problem. The market is the only adversary you found that is genuinely, structurally indifferent to how hard you've worked. It has no memory of your effort. Every day it starts over. You have found that clarifying in a way that other parts of life stopped being a long time ago. Your phone has 340 unread emails. The ones that matter have already been filtered to a folder your assistant manages. You have an assistant. He is good. You trust him, which is a word you don't use easily anymore, and mean more precisely than you used to. You still talk to your college roommate Mark once a month. He teaches high school history in Ohio. He makes $61,000 a year and coaches JV soccer. The conversations are easy and durable and require nothing from either of you except to still be the person the other one knew at 19. You've started to think of those calls as a kind of anchor. You don't tell Mark this. It would embarrass both of you. Last year, your daughter asked what you do for work. She's 9. You said you try to figure out what things are worth. She thought about this and said, "But who decides what things are worth?" You didn't have an answer. You've been thinking about it since. Somewhere on a brokerage platform right now, someone is staring at a 47 times return screenshot. They've read it 4 times. They're about to open an account with $1,500. They think they see something. You know exactly what they see. You know exactly what they don't see. The gap between those two things is 19 years long, and you cannot hand it to them. You finish your tea. The market opens in 4 minutes. You get to work.